Jacob Wells had always believed himself to be a man of logic. Skepticism came naturally to him, a byproduct of years working in data analysis and IT. When he relocated from Manchester to Lahore for a new job, he was looking for something peaceful, functional, and affordable. That's how he ended up in a fading colonial-era house tucked away in the quiet back streets of the city. It was strangely inexpensive, filled with antique woodwork, high ceilings, and stained glass windows that filtered golden sunlight during the day. A dream home, he thought, though it came with a strange warning. The landlord, Mr. Hussein, was a gaunt man with tired eyes and a forced politeness. When Jacob arrived to collect the keys, the man handed them over quickly, with a hesitancy that made Jacob pause. "There is one thing," Mr. Hussein said quietly. "The room at the end of the hall, it's locked. Don't open it, no matter what you hear." Jacob laughed nervously, assuming it was some superstition or an attempt to make the house more charming with a fake ghost story. But the seriousness in Mr. Hussein's eyes made him nod anyway. "Sure, no problem." The first few days were uneventful. Jacob set up his workstation, unpacked his books, and explored the nearby cafes. The neighbors were polite but distant. They asked polite questions but didn't linger. More than once he caught them glancing at his house with expressions that bordered on concern. He assumed it was just the foreigner effect, or maybe jealousy of the beautiful property he'd scored for so little. At night the house was silent. Too silent. The kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. It feels watched. On the fourth night, he heard it for the first time. Knocking, slow and steady, 3 knocks, then nothing. He sat up in bed trying to locate the sound. It was coming from the end of the hallway, from the locked door. He got up barefoot and crept through the dark corridor. The door stood still, undisturbed. He pressed his ear against it. Nothing. As he turned away, he swore he heard something. Breathing. The next morning, Jacob convinced himself it had been a dream. Maybe the house creaked and shifted with age. Maybe he was just tired. But that night it happened again, the same pattern, 3 slow knocks, then silence. He began noticing other things too. The portrait in the hallway seemed to tilt slightly every day, even though he kept fixing it. His bedroom window, locked every night, would be open in the morning. Small things, unexplainable, but dismissible, until they weren't. On Saturday, while organizing the study, Jacob discovered a small, rusted key in the back of a drawer. Attached to it was a brittle tag that read, "Back room." His heart pounded. The warning came back to him. The landlord's voice, serious and hushed. He knew he shouldn't, but something compelled him. Curiosity clawed at his logic. That night, after pacing his room for over an hour, Jacob made up his mind. He walked down the hallway, the wooden floor cold beneath his feet. The door stood there like it had been waiting. The key slid in easily, as if it had never been gone. The lock clicked. The room smelled of old dust and something faintly sweet, like dried flowers. Inside, a rocking chair faced the window, slowly creaking back and forth, though no wind moved. An antique desk sat in the corner, untouched. On the wall hung a sepia-toned photograph, a man in a white kurta, standing straight, his eyes scratched out violently. The sight made Jacob shiver. On the floor lay an open leather-bound journal. Only one sentence was legible on the open page. "He never left. He only waits." Jacob backed out of the room slowly, locking it behind him. That night, sleep came uneasily. In his dream, he saw the man from the photograph. No eyes, just black voids. The man stood at the foot of his bed and whispered in a voice that sounded like wind dragging across broken glass. "Now that you've seen me, I can see you." Jacob woke in a cold sweat, heart pounding, eyes darting toward the hallway. The rocking chair had stopped, but he could hear it start again, slowly. Creak, creak, creak. The days that followed were a descent into something Jacob couldn't rationalize. Every logical part of his mind tried to explain away the strange occurrences, but nothing fit. The house had shifted from simply eerie to outright hostile. The air felt heavier, colder, like it was pressing down on him. watching his every move, and always, that slow, measured creaking from the room at the end of the hall. It never stopped now, even in the middle of the day. He tried calling Mr. Hussein, but the landlord didn't answer. The voicemail box was full. The neighbors avoided him altogether. One elderly woman across the street closed her window the second he stepped outside. Another pretended not to hear when he called out for help. It was as if the house had made him invisible, or perhaps marked, determined to prove he wasn't. Losing his mind, Jacob set up his phone to record during the night. He placed it on the dresser, camera angled toward his bed and the hallway beyond. He left the light off and forced himself to sleep, despite the overwhelming feeling that something was watching from the darkness. In the morning, he reviewed the footage. For most of the night, there was nothing but silence. Then, at exactly 3:17 a.m., the hallway light flickered on by itself. The door to the locked room, which he had firmly sealed again, creaked open, slowly, as though someone on the other side was pushing it gently, deliberately. From the blackness, a figure emerged, pale, thin, wearing the same white kurta as the man in the photograph. The figure glided, not walked, down the hallway toward Jacob's bed. It stood still at the foot of the mattress for nearly 2 full minutes. Jacob didn't stir, and then, just as quietly, the figure turned and walked backward down the hallway, disappearing into the room. The door shut without a sound. He dropped the phone, trembling. That evening, he called a paranormal researcher, Dr. Layla Green, a British Pakistani academic who had studied haunted properties and supernatural phenomena across South Asia. He emailed her the video. She responded within minutes and arrived at the house before nightfall. Layla didn't enter right away. She stood on the porch and stared at the structure as if weighing something invisible. "Do you know what this place is?" she asked. This house belonged to a British officer named Edwin Price in the 1940s. He was obsessed with the occult, held seances, collected cursed artifacts. He died here. They found him in that same back room, frozen with his eyes wide open and a smile carved into his face. Jacob led her to the room. She stepped inside, slowly, cautiously. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "The energy here, it's anchored. Whatever spirit lingers, it doesn't roam. It stays in this room, feeding on anyone who enters." She paused. "Or those who see him." Jacob asked her what to do, how to make it stop. Layla took out incense, prayer beads, and a mirror covered in cloth. She placed the mirror on the chair and told Jacob not to look into it. "He uses reflection to appear. That's his doorway. You've let him in, and now he's looking for a way to stay." They began the ritual, soft chanting echoing through the room. The lights flickered. The temperature dropped so suddenly that Jacob could see his breath. The mirror began to fog. From the glass, a handprint appeared, pressed against the inside. Layla gasped. "He's here." Then the mirror shattered. The rocking chair slammed backward, knocking over the candle. The journal on the floor opened again, pages flipping violently until it stopped on a new sentence, freshly inked, though no one had touched it. "I was a guest. Now I'm the host." Layla grabbed Jacob's arm. "We have to leave. Now." They ran for the door. It wouldn't open. The locks turned, on their own, metal clanking. The lights blew out. Behind them, the sound of footsteps, bare feet on wood, slow and deliberate. Jacob turned just enough to see the figure standing in the hallway, smiling with a jaw that opened far too wide. He screamed. Everything went black. When Jacob woke up, it was morning. Layla was gone. So was the mirror, the candles, the journal. But the door to the back room was wide open. Inside, the rocking chair sat still. On the seat lay a photo. It was of Jacob, eyes scratched out, and from the hallway the faint sound of creaking resumed. Creak, 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 waiting.